Welcome to Discovering. We're in the Hiawatha National Forest for an overnighter at McKeever Cabin. And Kristen takes the ultimate Trillium Tour.
I usually describe it as trillions of trilliums. There's a lot.
Stick around, that's all tonight, right here on Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
This past week's travels took Patty and I to McKeever Lake. McKeever is located about halfway up Highway 13, right about in the center of the western Hiawatha National Forest. The 132-acre lake supports a population of largemouth and smallmouth bass, pike, and bluegills, and it was stocked with muskies back in 1990. The unique feature that brought us to McKeever Lake, McKeever Cabin, which is where we would spend the night. The plan was simple. We'd hike in, hit the lake, catch some fish for a late afternoon fish fry, and just basically spend the rest of the day relaxing. Now, I tend to be overly optimistic when I set out on adventures of this sort. I picture a nice sunshiny day on a gorgeous UP lake with a stringer of bluegills trailing alongside my canoe ready for a pan of hot oil. Once we get those bluegills out of the way, we'll just casually tour around the lake, satisfying some much needed fishing time by catching bass one after another, maybe even a big pike. Well, that's certainly all possible. It's probably not realistic, at least not in hindsight. But again, the plan was pretty simple. Not really much that can go wrong. Well, we did hit a couple of bumps in the road, and we'll need to backtrack a bit for a look at what it took to get to the point where we are, sitting in this canoe. First stop was Elmer's County Market in Escanaba, where we dropped off some seasoning and fish batter products and got the first hint that things may go a bit south. The good news is, in spite of knowing nothing could get in the way of catching at least some bluegill for dinner, I activated the backup plan. Maybe, no. There it is. From there we were off to the Hiawatha. Oh, the bad news? It was about the time we reached Highway 13 I realized that I apparently somehow managed to leave my small camera on the back of the truck, which put it somewhere between Elmer's and here. After driving past the sign to the cabin by 8 miles or so, and then back, we did get on the right track. Our journey began an hour later than I wanted. Add in some time to backtrack to get cell service to call my buddy John at Elmer's, and time to find the road, and time to stop and pick up night crawlers that I forgot to get while we were on our way, would leave us almost not enough time to fish. The trail to the cabin is about 2 miles off of Highway 13. We, now hurrying, unloaded the truck and loaded the canoe. The hike in is only about a quarter of a mile. The mosquito population is in no danger of extinction in this neck of the woods. It wasn't long and we were at our one night home away from home and ready to hit the water. By the time I dropped the canoe, Patty was at the door and ready to move in. I think one of the most memorable parts of this trip were Patty's words, Please tell me you have the combination for this door. Oops. I can't thank the previous tenants enough for forgetting to latch one of the windows. I seem to find over and over that on trips such as this, my ill-fated optimism is slowly crushed by events brought on by my own hand. McKeever Cabin was constructed in 1991 through a partnership between the Forest Service and Hiawatha Log Homes of Munising, along with considerable volunteer work. It sits on a knoll surrounded by evergreens and hardwoods overlooking the lake. The modest amenities are perfectly suited to its peaceful backwoods location. I already know I'm coming back here sometime in the near future for more than one night. Time to fish. We were now somehow over 4 hours late, but still had high hopes of going home with that tenderloin still in the cooler. How hard can it be to catch a handful of eater-sized bluegills? Little scutters. We were not long and my fears of not catching dinner began to overshadow my optimism for an early limit. Then, dinner for two, all in one fish. The question now arose, when is a smallmouth not catch and release? When you're on a remote lake and craving a fish fry maybe. Deep fried smallmouth. Doesn't sound that bad. This would solve my fish fry dilemma with one set of fillets. Well, that answers that question. Once again, by my own hand. Still time to catch some gills, though. Yeah, and that was that. A warm fire in the cabin to dry out, and it was time for dinner. The intermittent rain showers took away any hopes of cooking over the fire pit. But I actually did prepare for that possibility. came here with a craving for a fish fry, and I'm leaving with a craving for a fish fry. But the alternative wasn't terrible. By morning the rain was gone, and through the front door from my cozy sleeping bag I could see the sun beginning to light the sky. Pretty hard to resist being part of that. On a morning like this, in a spot like this, on a lake like this, whether or not I catch a single fish is insignificant. Which is a good thing, since I didn't catch a single fish. After some R&R on the water, it was time to head back to the cabin for a hot cup of coffee and some breakfast. That chicken got her money's worth. All in all, the trip was great. The mosquitoes were plentiful, but not bad by the cabin, and none at all on the lake. If we hadn't left an hour late, lost the camera, backtracked for cell service, and passed up the road, we'd have had much more time to fish before the rain set in, which I'm sure would have supplied us with that stringer of fish fry that I planned on. But I guess a steak dinner is okay in a pinch. It'd have been nice if I'd thought about bringing the door combination, but I guess that worked out okay too. Oh, and a big thanks for John and Shelley at Elmer's for finding my camera in the parking lot. Yeah, we had a few bumps in the road, but it's pretty hard not to enjoy time in the outdoors, at a cabin in the heart of the Hiawatha. The UP is blessed with so many spots like this, places you can go for any level of adventure you like. Places you can go where you're the only one there, where you have an entire lake to yourself. I have to say thanks to the Forest Service folks who take care of the Hiawatha. It's pristine, it's clean, and so well preserved in its natural state, and an absolute UP treasure. Thanks for making trips like this possible.
After the snow finally melts, one of the first signs that spring is really here is the appearance of something else white blanketing the ground. The great white trillium, one of the earliest blooming woodland wildflowers. These perennial beauties spring up in my neck of the woods of Ontonagon County in mid to late May. Being ephemeral, they only last 2 to 3 weeks. Also called the white wake robin, snow trillium, trinity flower, or large flowered trillium, it is easily recognizable by its waxy white flower with 3 petals, 3 sepals that surround the flower, and 3 deep green leaves per stem. The great white trillium is part of the lily family and is a delicate flower. Most people know it's illegal, or at least taboo, to pick this 3-petaled wildflower. The plant is long-lived, living for over 70 years, but it takes about 17 years to mature, and picking the flower with its leaves can prevent it from regrowing. Great white trillium generally occurs in patches of dozens to hundreds to thousands of individual flowers. Until now, I had never seen them by the thousands. Trilliums grow best on well-drained, rich composted soils in deciduous or mixed woodlands, wooded slopes, large shady ravines, and rocky bluffs. So the hills and bluffs between Mass City and Rockland are the perfect place to go looking for them by the thousands. I met up with Mass City native Dean Jutinen and his cousin Rick Ojala for the ultimate Trillium Tour.
Trillions of trilliums. I don't know how many there are, but there's a lot.
And being a beautiful spring day, we took ATVs.
I'm going to show you the thickest patch of trilliums I've ever seen. These are pretty thick, but not as thick as that really thick patch. It's like nothing but trilliums. And the prettiest power line I've ever seen, too. The trilliums are kind of slowly growing right into the open area on the power lines.
Another fun fact I learned while researching, white-tailed deer are also particularly fond of eating trilliums. Trilliums weren't the only sight on our tour. We passed through the hills of a few old copper mines, the Caledonia, Nebraska, and Minnesota mines.
So we'll just go a little bit farther in here and we'll actually go back toward that Nebraska entrance and then it'll be a dead end. But you can walk over and look at the entrance then. It's a very, very short walk, like less than 100 yards. From here to Mass City, it's called the Evergreen Bluff. And as you can see, the pine trees really like that rocky surface. They find their cracks in the rocks and there's just enough soil for them. And they do really well.
We rode to the tops of bluffs to check out the spectacular views.
That is the river coming from Victoria Dam, combined South and West Branch, and it meets the Middle and East Branch. They come from Military Hills are over there. See the highway, little piece of highway?
And above Rockland to a church replica, which I thought would be a tad bit bigger.
Used to be a full-size church on the hill, of course, with a light up in the steeple. They put a light up in there. Over this way, there was not a tree to be seen anywhere. Back when the Minnesota mine was going strong in the heyday, they mowed every single tree on all these hills. If you see the old photos, they're just bare hills. So you had a clear view to Lake Superior. From right here where you're standing, you could actually see the blue waters of Lake Superior. The lighthouse in Ontonagon, as it turns out, lined up nicely with this old church here. So when they put a light in this church, it essentially acted as a range light. If you lined up the light in Ontonagon with the light in the church, it gave you the straight path up the river if you were coming in with a boat. So they used it for navigation for a while.
I also learned that Rockland was once 3 different towns.
And I think this was Webster, but don't quote me on that. But there were 3 communities, Webster, Williamsburg, and Rosendale. And now it's just modern day, it's Rockland, it's all Rockland. But there used to be a community living here in the valley.
I'm tucking that tidbit of info into the back of my brain for local trivia night. Whether you're out looking for wildflowers, mine shafts, vistas, or the ruins of bygone towns, there is much to explore right here in our own backyard.
Well, that's it for this week. Be sure to check out 906outdoors.com where you'll find the 906 Fishing Report, TV6 weather, shopping, and more. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.